Good afternoon. I would like to talk about uh, a term that I heard about guilt, but not guilt between individuals, but guilt on a massive scale, like a group of people. Um, I can't remember what it's called, mass guilt. I might have to look that up again. I was watching a program of an interview of a a person who escaped their country from totalitarian persecution and oppression, and the oppression that they experienced in their life once they made it to Western civilization, the United States or whatever. Uh, they made a comparison between the two uh, oppressions, the oppression that she received and the oppression that the United States is known for in its history of slavery, Jim Crow, things of that nature. Now, this person uh, experienced harsh repercussions for crimes that were enacted by ancestral generations past. But where she came from, if someone broke the law, not only would that person be punished, but their families would be punished up to the third and fourth generation. And she took her pain and she took her experience and she made a comparison to Western civilization, United States, and slavery. Now, this, uh, I don't know if you call it region, guilt, region guilt, but it's a guilt dealing with a group of people. She felt that from her experience, she shouldn't be held accountable for the mistakes or sins of her ancestors. She went to say that she felt that um, in the United States, her comparison to slavery, that people who owned slaves, um, uh, the original forefounders of our country, you know, the country was built on the backs of slaves and the industries and all those things that came from slave labor. That the descendants of the people who owned slaves shouldn't be held accountable for the mistakes of their ancestors. Now, mind you, I understand what she was saying, though granted, I felt that she could have benefited a little bit more education in that realm of the history, the span of 400 years of slavery, Jim Crow, um, and how these things continue to perpetuate systemic racism. Now, there's a difference in the comparison that I think she missed. And though, granted, in her defense, the interview wasn't about this. This was just a mention. Um, but in all fairness, when you state an opinion on something, it is fair game for people to also debate, which is what I'm doing right now. Her family generation and thing that she suffered, she, they were being punished for things that they considered crimes. Um, in a dictatorship, what's not a crime? So there were unfair laws and unfair practices and punishments back then, and the the punishments never fit the crime. To punish third and fourth generations for maybe one person possibly stealing or saying something offensive is ridiculous. And no, in that aspect, from her experience, I agree. She should not be held accountable for something that her great ancestors had done individually. Now, when you speak of slavery and you speak of Jim Crow and when you speak of law enforcement and you speak of institutions of imprisonment, You speak on uh, multiple foundations that were actually built in systemic racism. When we hold people accountable, we're not holding the descendants accountable for slavery. We're holding the descendants for the repercussions and the systemic repercussions of slavery. You got to understand, a lot of systems were built on slavery. It was an enterprise. A lot of these systems still exist. Housing, banking institutions, prisons, uh, law enforcement, politics, even to a degree, are all built or manipulated through the targeting of minorities, African American people, Latino people, Hispanic people, non-white people. So it's something that you have to take into account. We're not referring to making people pay for slavery. The only people that we even address are the people that actually can do something about it. Now, the average person, what I would say to the average Caucasian person who may not understand or know some of the atrocities that this country has done, that you educate yourself. That's it. There's just you having knowledge of the things that's happened will help you to understand what it is that we're asking for today. Also, for the people who are Caucasian that are in position of power to change specifically legislation, you can dismantle the systems of systemic racism that continue today. I thank this young lady for her story, her surviving, her making it out of that country. Um, but there's always two sides to a story. She has one side, this is the other side to it. You can stop a practice, but the long term effects take time. And it takes all of us to come together and to solve. You can only solve the equations when you have all the variables. I felt like she didn't have all the variables, and she didn't fully understand. But though I don't blame her for her opinion, I understand from her experiences where her opinion is coming from. We have our own experience in this country, and the reasons why we fight for the things we fight for, why we protest, why we march, why we kneel, aren't to end slavery, but its effects that it has on the engine which we call America and everything that makes this country run. Also, side note, whenever you are asked a question, is America a racist country? Your response should be built and based on the practices of how this country runs. When you can look at anything that was ever invented or founded in this country and trace it back to some form of oppression or racism, then you have to be honest with yourself and say that, yes, this country is a racist country. Is it something that can be changed? Yes, it can be changed through the dismantling of certain systems that perpetuate systemic racism. Now, on the individual basis, you can't change everyone. There are people that I believe, not only those that benefit from the country being the way it is, and the target of minorities, them profiting also, that they're just evil people. I'm sorry, camera went out. And those people may never change. Though I do say to those who are not in a position of power of change, you may not be able to change things on a global scale or even on a national scale, but individually, especially when you speak of someone of color, it would do you a great service to educate yourself before engaging in conversations with people. You have to know what is offensive, what is a stereotype, what does it mean, why does it mean that? And though you may not personally understand it, having the knowledge and knowing these things will help you a great deal when it comes to speaking to someone who is different from you. We can all learn a lot from each other. In this country, though granted, is a racist country, it doesn't have to stay that way. There are practical solutions to these issues. Not everything is overnight, but with due diligence and work and a coming together, it can be done. Some things hurt, some things harm, which I discussed in another video. It's a lot of pain, a lot of pain. We've already seen harm done through these practices. The hurt may be the change of the practice, but the hurt is only temporary. We're trying to undo the harm. If we work together, we can accomplish a great many things. As you know, I am a Christian, and I do subscribe to certain moral obligations of the Bible and beliefs of the Bible. And though granted, everyone doesn't, and not forcing anything on anyone, but if you believe the story of the people in Genesis who came together to build a great tower, when our minds are set to do things as unified, we can accomplish anything. Anything. And in that story, God himself had to stop us from building this tower to heaven. Though granted, it may not have been the best idea, but when we come together, we can accomplish great things. Do better. Treat each other with respect. Learn about each other before we comment or before we share our opinions. Do the homework. Care about what it is that you're so passionate about. Care about how it affects people and the things that you say. Words have power. And that's one thing that I always say in my life. And once again, you don't have to subscribe to the Bible, but if you believe anything in the creation story, you should already know that words are very powerful. Your opinions are powerful. They matter. They build and destroy.